If you keep carrying old bricks, you'll keep building the same house. How many times have you put your partner's happiness above your own, even when it hurt? Every decision to say yes when you meant no, every moment you silenced your voice to keep the peace, leaves a mark. These compromises often start small, so subtle they seem insignificant at first. But as the days turn into years, they build into a heavy load. It's the load you feel when you wake up tired even after a full night's sleep, or when a sense of unease settles in, and you can't quite name its source. What if today was the day you finally faced this burden? A moment to see how years of compromises have slowly taken you away from who you really are. At some point, this emotional burden begins to feel inescapable. It's the weight of living a life shaped more by expectations than by authenticity. Perhaps you've felt it in the way you hesitate before making a decision, wondering not what you want, but what others will think. Or maybe it's in the way you've forgotten how to dream for yourself because you've spent so long fulfilling someone else's. These patterns are not random. For many, they stem from lessons learned early in life. That belonging often means conforming, that love is earned through sacrifice, and that saying no risks rejection. Over time, these beliefs settle into the fabric of who we are, guiding decisions in ways we hardly notice. And yet their cumulative effect can be profound, eroding the sense of self until it feels as though the person you once were is slipping away. Even so, it's not just the big life-altering compromises that contribute to this weight. Often, it's the smallest acts. Agreeing to help when your own schedule is full, pretending to enjoy something you don't, or biting your tongue during a conversation. These moments, seemingly harmless, add up like drops filling a bucket. And one day, that bucket overflows. What's striking is how this cycle perpetuates itself. The more you give up on what you truly want, the harder it becomes to remember what that even is. Your sense of identity, once vibrant and personal, fades into the background, replaced by a version of yourself crafted to meet others' expectations. It's not intentional, it's a gradual shift. But it leaves you wondering, is this all there is? It's worth asking why so many people find themselves caught in this cycle. One reason is the false sense of security that compromise provides. Saying yes often feels safer. It avoids conflict, rejection, or disappointment. But that safety is an illusion. In truth, it distances you from the very things that make life meaningful: authenticity, genuine connection, and a sense of purpose. This emotional weight doesn't just affect your inner world. It reaches into every aspect of life. Relationships can feel strained, not because of overt conflict, but because they lack balance. Health begins to suffer under the strain of chronic stress, manifesting in anxiety or fatigue. Even decision-making becomes clouded as you second-guess yourself, unsure of what truly matters anymore. The good news is that recognizing this burden is the first step toward letting it go. Awareness is powerful. It allows you to see that the compromises of the past don't have to dictate your future. You can begin, one small step at a time, to reclaim your sense of self and lighten the load you've been carrying for so long. Every compromise starts somewhere. Often it begins with the best intentions, to make someone happy, to avoid conflict, or to keep a relationship strong. But beneath these choices lies a complex web of emotions, beliefs, and social pressures that shape why we say yes, even when we want to say no. From an early age, many of us are taught that pleasing others is a virtue. We learn that being agreeable makes us likable, that avoiding conflict keeps relationships stable, and that putting others first is a sign of strength. These lessons may have helped us navigate childhood, but as adults, they can become a trap, locking us into patterns of self-sacrifice that feel impossible to break. One of the strongest forces behind these compromises is the need to belong. Humans are wired to seek connection. It's how we've survived for centuries. But this need can also push us to prioritize acceptance over authenticity. Saying yes to someone else can feel safer than risking rejection or disapproval. Over time, though, these choices lead to an inner conflict, the desire to be loved versus the need to stay true to ourselves. Another key driver is fear. Fear of disappointing someone we care about. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of conflict and the discomfort it brings. These fears can become so ingrained that we stop questioning them. Instead, we go along with what's expected, telling ourselves it's easier this way. But each time we give in to these fears, we chip away at our own needs and values. There's also the influence of cultural norms. Many societies celebrate selflessness as a virtue, especially in close relationships. Phrases like "love means sacrifice" and "you have to give to receive" reinforce the idea that compromising is always the right thing to do. While compromise is an important part of any healthy relationship, it becomes harmful when it's one-sided. When you're the one giving over and over, without receiving the same effort in return. These pressures, both internal and external, blur the line between healthy and excessive compromise. Healthy compromises come from mutual respect and shared understanding. They create balance, where both people's needs are considered. Excessive compromises, on the other hand, come from fear, obligation, or a desire to avoid conflict. They often leave one person feeling unseen and unfulfilled. Think about how this plays out in daily life. It could be as simple as agreeing to watch a movie you don't enjoy or taking on tasks at work that aren't your responsibility. But it could also be more significant, like staying in a relationship that no longer makes you happy or sacrificing a career opportunity because it might upset someone else. Each choice might feel small in the moment, but together, they create a pattern, one that can reshape your life and your sense of self. When you constantly prioritize others over yourself, it can lead to feelings of stress, exhaustion, and dissatisfaction in your relationships. Over time, always putting others first can create resentment and make you feel like you've lost who you really are. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow self, the hidden parts of who we are that get buried when we try too hard to meet others' expectations. The more you push your true needs and feelings aside, the heavier this shadow becomes, leaving you feeling stuck and disconnected from yourself. These moments of doubt, "How did I get here?" or "Why do I feel so lost?" are signs that it's time to reconnect with the real you. It's important to understand that these patterns don't form overnight. They're built over years of repeated choices and reinforced by the people and environments around us. But the good news is that recognizing them is the first step to breaking free. By understanding why you've been saying yes, whether it's out of fear, habit, or cultural expectation, you can start to take back control. This isn't about blaming yourself or anyone else. It's about seeing these compromises for what they are, an attempt to meet a need that might no longer serve you. Once you recognize that, you can begin to ask yourself what you truly want and how you can honor that without fear or guilt. Recognizing that you're stuck in a cycle of compromise often feels like waking up from a dream. At first, everything seems fine, even normal. But slowly, you start to notice patterns, choices, and behaviors that keep repeating, leaving you drained and unfulfilled. These are the patterns of compromise, and they can be difficult to spot because they've become part of how you navigate the world. It begins with the need to please, to avoid conflict, or to meet expectations that don't align with who you are. You might find yourself always saying yes to avoid letting others down or staying quiet in situations where you should speak up. Over time, these patterns stop being conscious decisions and turn into habits, automatic responses that feel impossible to break. Triggers are the moments that set these patterns in motion. They're like invisible strings, pulling you into behaviors you've repeated for years. It might be the fear of upsetting someone, the pressure of a request framed as just one small favor, or the discomfort of seeing someone disappointed in you. These triggers often come from deep-seated fears or beliefs, shaped by experiences that taught you it's safer to compromise than to stand your ground. For many people, these patterns begin in childhood. Maybe you were praised for being the easy one in your family, or learned to avoid conflict because it felt overwhelming. Perhaps you internalized the idea that love and approval must be earned through sacrifice. These lessons, learned early, stay with us as adults, driving the compromises we make in our careers, friendships, and romantic relationships. When you're stuck in this cycle, the signs are often subtle. You might notice that you feel uneasy when asked for help, as though saying no would make you a bad person. You might realize that you're always the one to apologize first, even when you're not at fault. Or perhaps you sense a growing resentment that's hard to place, the feeling that your needs are constantly being overlooked. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow offers insight into why these patterns are so powerful. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we hide or deny because we think they're unacceptable. When we constantly compromise to please others, we push our own needs and desires into this shadow, leaving us feeling incomplete. It's not just about saying yes too often. It's about the parts of you that get lost each time you do. To break this cycle, you first need to identify these patterns and triggers. Pay attention to the situations that leave you feeling drained or uneasy. For example, do you always agree to plans even when you're exhausted? Do you feel guilty for putting yourself first, even in small ways? These are clues that you're operating from a place of habit rather than intention. One practical way to uncover these patterns is to keep a journal. Write down moments when you felt you compromised more than you wanted to. What was the situation? How did you react? How did it make you feel afterward? Seeing these moments on paper can help you connect the dots and recognize where change is needed. Once you've identified your triggers, start questioning them. Ask yourself, why do I feel like I have to agree? Or, what am I afraid will happen if I say no? These questions can reveal the beliefs driving your behavior, such as the fear of being seen as selfish, or the worry that saying no will lead to rejection. By bringing these fears into the open, you can begin to challenge them. Breaking free from the cycle of compromise isn't about never saying yes. It's about learning to say it when it truly feels right, rather than out of guilt or fear. It's about finding balance, where your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. The invisible impact of compromise is something you feel before you can name it. It shows up in quiet ways, in the tension you carry, the exhaustion you can't shake, and the sense that you've lost a part of yourself along the way. These compromises may have seemed small at first, but over time, they begin to shape your life in ways you didn't expect. Every time you stay silent to avoid conflict or say yes when you mean no, it leaves a mark. At first, it feels like the right thing to do. Keeping the peace, making someone else happy, or avoiding an argument. But the cost of constantly putting others ahead of yourself is heavier than it seems. Each time you ignore your needs, it chips away at your energy, your confidence, and your sense of who you are. You might notice this impact most in your body. Maybe it's the tightness in your chest when you agree to something you didn't want to do, or the way your shoulders ache after a long day of keeping everyone else happy. These physical sensations are your body's way of telling you something isn't right. Over time, ignoring these signals can lead to constant fatigue or stress that feels impossible to escape. Compromise also affects your relationships. At first, giving in or staying quiet might seem like a way to keep things running smoothly. But when you're always the one making sacrifices, it creates an imbalance. You might start to feel like you're giving too much while receiving very little in return. This can lead to resentment, not just toward the other person, but toward yourself for allowing it to happen. The hardest part is how these compromises can change the way others see you. Without meaning to, you teach people that your boundaries are flexible and your needs can wait. Over time, they come to expect it, and the dynamic in your relationships shifts. You may feel unheard, unseen, or taken for granted even by those you care about most. But perhaps the deepest impact is on your sense of self. Each compromise sends a quiet message. Your needs don't matter as much as theirs. Over time, these messages add up. You might find yourself questioning who you are or what you want, because you've spent so long prioritizing others. It's like losing pieces of yourself bit by bit, until you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. Recognizing this invisible impact isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding how these patterns have shaped your life and your choices. The first step is to notice the moments when you feel drained or uneasy. These feelings aren't random. They're clues pointing to where you've been sacrificing too much. Take a moment to think about your relationships. Are there people in your life who rely on you to always say yes? Do certain situations leave you feeling like your needs don't matter? These are signs that the balance in these dynamics needs to be restored. The good news is that these patterns can be changed. The invisible impact of compromise might feel overwhelming, but awareness is the first step toward breaking free. By noticing where these patterns show up, you can start to make different choices. Choices that honor your needs and allow you to reclaim the parts of yourself that were left behind. Who would you be if no one expected anything from you? For many, the answer feels unclear, buried under years of making choices to meet others' needs instead of their own. Toxic compromises don't just weigh you down. They slowly take away the parts of yourself that make you feel alive and whole. Rediscovering who you are means peeling back the layers of expectations and reclaiming what truly matters to you. When your life revolves around meeting others' expectations, it can feel natural to push aside your dreams, opinions, and needs. Over time, this creates a version of yourself that doesn't feel fully yours. You might find yourself unsure of what makes you happy or what you even want. Instead of living authentically, you move through life trying to fit into roles that don't align with your true self. The first step to redefining your identity is reconnecting with your values. Ask yourself, what do I care about the most? This isn't about what others expect you to prioritize, but about what feels meaningful to you. Is it honesty, creativity, freedom? Values are like a compass. They guide your choices and help you make decisions that reflect who you truly are. Another way to rediscover yourself is by looking at what makes you feel alive. Think about the activities, interests, or moments in your life that bring you genuine joy. These aren't the things you do because you have to, but because they nourish you. Maybe it's a forgotten passion, like writing or painting, or something as simple as spending time in nature. These pieces of yourself often get pushed aside when you're caught in cycles of compromise, but they're still there, waiting to be reclaimed. Your relationships also play a big role in how you see yourself. The people around you can either support your growth or reinforce the toxic patterns you're trying to break. Reflect on who makes you feel valued and encouraged versus who leaves you feeling drained or overlooked. Building your identity isn't just about self-reflection. It's also about surrounding yourself with people who respect and celebrate the person you're becoming. Taking small steps toward authenticity can make a big difference. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start by saying no to something that doesn't align with your values. Spend time doing something that brings you joy, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Each small choice helps you reconnect with who you are and builds the confidence to make bigger changes. This process isn't always easy. It can feel unfamiliar to focus on yourself, especially if you've spent years putting others first. But the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Each time you prioritize your needs or act in alignment with your values, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was lost to compromise. Rediscovering your identity isn't about creating someone new. It's about uncovering the parts of yourself that got buried under the weight of expectations. The real you has always been there, waiting for the chance to come forward. With every step you take toward living authentically, you move closer to a life that feels true to who you are. Letting go isn't about forgetting or pretending that the compromises you've made never existed. It's about making space for your feelings, your boundaries, and the parts of yourself that have been hidden for too long. This process isn't easy, but it's essential for reclaiming your life. The first step to letting go is recognizing what no longer serves you. Think of the commitments, habits, and relationships in your life. Which of them feel heavy? Which leave you feeling drained instead of supported? These are signs that something needs to change. Letting go begins with acknowledging that you've been holding on to things out of habit, fear, or obligation, rather than genuine desire. One of the hardest parts of letting go is dealing with guilt. You might feel like you're letting others down by saying no or stepping back, but holding on to something that doesn't align with who you are doesn't help anyone. It creates resentment, tension, and a sense of being trapped. Letting go is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. To start this process, try focusing on small changes. Begin with something manageable, like saying no to a task you don't want to take on. Practice setting a boundary in a way that feels firm but kind. These small steps help build the confidence to take on bigger challenges. Another part of letting go is allowing yourself to feel. Often we suppress emotions because they're uncomfortable or inconvenient. But those emotions are part of the process. Whether it's anger, sadness, or even relief, let yourself experience them fully. Feelings don't need to be fixed, they just need to be acknowledged. Letting go also means accepting that you can't control everything. You can't change how others react, and you can't undo the past. But you can choose how you move forward. Focus on what's within your power, your actions, your boundaries, and the life you want to create. This isn't a quick fix. It's a process of learning to trust yourself again. Each time you let go of something that no longer fits, you make room for something better. You create space for your values, your joy, and your true self to thrive. Letting go often feels like stepping into the unknown. You might wonder, what happens if I stop saying yes? Will people still value me if I set boundaries? These doubts are normal. They're part of unlearning the patterns that kept you stuck in the first place. But the truth is, letting go isn't about losing something. It's about gaining clarity and freedom. Boundaries are one of the most powerful tools in this process. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a clear statement of what you will and won't accept. For example, if a friend always expects you to drop everything for them, a boundary might be saying, I care about you, but I need time for myself too. At first, it can feel uncomfortable to assert yourself this way, especially if you're used to putting others first. But boundaries are an act of self-respect. They protect your time, energy, and well-being. One helpful approach to setting boundaries is to think of them as invitations to healthier relationships. When you're honest about what you need, it gives others the chance to meet you halfway. While not everyone will respond positively, those who truly value you will respect your honesty. And those who don't? Letting them go might be exactly what you need to grow. Another key part of letting go is forgiveness. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or pretending everything is fine. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the weight of resentment and blame. It's saying, I won't let this control me anymore. Sometimes the person you need to forgive most is yourself. You might feel regret for the times you compromised too much, or for staying silent when you wanted to speak up. But holding on to guilt only keeps you tied to the past. Forgiving yourself is a way to move forward with compassion and understanding. As you let go, you'll notice something unexpected: space. Space for new experiences, new connections, and new ways of being. This space can feel unfamiliar at first, but it's also an opportunity. It's a blank canvas where you can begin to paint the life you truly want. To embrace this space, focus on what brings you joy and fulfillment. Maybe it's rediscovering a hobby you've neglected, or spending time with people who uplift you. Maybe it's simply taking a moment to be still and appreciate how far you've come. These small actions are like seeds, planting the foundation for a life that feels more aligned with who you are. Letting go doesn't happen all at once. It's a series of small, intentional choices. Some days will feel easier than others, but with each step, you'll notice the weight you've been carrying begin to lighten. You'll start to see yourself more clearly, not as someone defined by compromises, but as someone who is learning to honor their worth. This process isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about learning to trust that your needs and boundaries are just as valid as anyone else's. Letting go is how you create the space to welcome yourself back home. Building a life of emotional freedom isn't about escaping responsibility or cutting yourself off from others. It's about designing a life where your choices align with your values, where you feel grounded in your decisions, and where your relationships are built on mutual respect. This isn't a sudden transformation, but a gradual process of creating habits, connections, and environments that support the person you are becoming. One of the first steps in creating this life is learning to prioritize what truly matters to you. This might feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you're used to living according to others' expectations. But prioritizing yourself doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities or ignoring the people you care about. It means being intentional about where you direct your time and energy. Start by asking yourself, what do I need to feel balanced and fulfilled? This question might lead you to redefine how you approach your day-to-day life. For some, it might mean carving out time for rest or hobbies. For others, it could mean saying no to commitments that drain you or setting boundaries with people who take more than they give. These small shifts create a ripple effect, helping you build a life that feels lighter and more authentic. Another key aspect of emotional freedom is learning to navigate your emotions without fear or judgment. Freedom doesn't mean never feeling sadness, anger, or frustration. It means allowing yourself to experience these emotions fully, without being controlled by them. Practices like journaling, mindfulness, or simply taking a moment to breathe can help you process your feelings in a healthy way. Relationships play a crucial role in this process. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your boundaries and encourage your growth is essential. Emotional freedom thrives in connections that are built on honesty and mutual support. If a relationship feels one-sided or leaves you feeling drained, it's worth reflecting on whether it aligns with the life you want to create. Creating a life of authenticity also involves letting go of the need for external validation. This doesn't mean you stop caring about what others think entirely, but it does mean shifting your focus inward. Instead of asking, "Will this make them happy?" try asking, "Does this make me happy?" This simple change can have a profound impact on how you make decisions and how you see yourself. As you move toward a more authentic life, it's important to be patient with yourself. Change doesn't happen overnight, and there will be setbacks along the way. What matters is that you keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Every choice to honor your needs, every moment spent in alignment with your values, brings you closer to the life you're creating. One practical way to stay on this path is to establish daily habits that support your emotional freedom. These could include morning affirmations, taking a few minutes each day to reflect on what you're grateful for, or setting intentions for how you want to show up in the world. These habits might seem small, but over time, they build a foundation for a life that feels steady and purposeful. Living authentically doesn't mean life will always be easy. There will still be challenges, conflicts, and moments of doubt. But when you're grounded in who you are and clear about what matters to you, those challenges become easier to navigate. Emotional freedom isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about knowing you have the tools and the resilience to face it. As you continue to create this life, you'll notice a shift. The weight of past compromises will feel lighter. The voice inside you, the one that knows what you need and who you are, will grow stronger. And you'll start to trust yourself in ways you never thought possible. This trust becomes the foundation of your emotional freedom. It allows you to take risks, to try new things, and to step into spaces that once felt intimidating. You'll begin to embrace the unknown, not because it's easy, but because you know you have the inner resources to handle whatever comes your way. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about progress and learning to appreciate the beauty in imperfection. Authenticity doesn't demand that you have all the answers or that you never falter. Instead, it calls for honesty, with yourself and with others. It's okay to admit when you're unsure or to acknowledge when you need help. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a sign of strength and self-awareness. One of the most profound aspects of emotional freedom is the realization that you are not defined by your past. The mistakes, the regrets, the moments of shame, they are all part of your story, but they do not dictate your future. Forgiveness, both of yourself and others, is a powerful tool in this process. It frees you from the chains of resentment and self-judgment, allowing you to move forward with a lighter heart. As you build this life, you'll also find that it's not just about you. Your emotional freedom and authenticity ripple outward, influencing those around you. When you show up as your true self, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage to set boundaries, to speak your truth, and to live in alignment with your values can inspire others to reflect on their own lives and choices. Creating a life of emotional freedom and authenticity is a deeply personal and ongoing process. It's about embracing the journey, celebrating the small victories, and learning from the challenges. There will be days when it feels effortless, and days when it feels like an uphill battle. Both are part of the process, and both are equally valuable. Remember, you are the architect of your life. Every choice, every boundary, every step toward authenticity is a brick in the foundation of the life you are building. Trust the process, trust yourself, and keep moving forward. The life you desire is not just a dream, it's a reality waiting to be created by you. Emotional freedom is not a destination, it's a way of being. It's the quiet, daily choice to live in alignment with who you are and what you truly value. It's the decision to approach each moment with intention, even when life feels overwhelming. Freedom doesn't mean a life without challenges. It means having the strength to face those challenges with clarity and self-trust. Living a life of emotional freedom is about cultivating a mindset of possibility and growth. It's choosing to see each day as an opportunity to reconnect with yourself, to step closer to the life you envision. Sometimes this might mean taking a risk, trying something new, or letting go of what no longer serves you. Other times, it's the simple act of pausing, breathing, and reminding yourself that you have the power to choose how you respond to the world around you. Emotional freedom is also about finding joy in the present. It's in the small moments, a kind word, a deep breath, or the stillness of a quiet morning. These moments remind us that freedom isn't found in grand gestures or distant futures, but in how we choose to experience the here and now. It's in savoring life, even with its imperfections. As we close, I want to remind you that this journey is uniquely yours. No one else can define what freedom looks like for you. It might mean taking bold steps toward a dream, or making subtle shifts that bring more peace into your daily life. Whatever it looks like, know that it's valid, it's meaningful, and it's worth pursuing. Remember this: choosing your freedom is the greatest act of courage and love you can ever take. It's not about being perfect or fearless. It's about showing up for yourself every single day with honesty and intention. Now I encourage you to reflect and act. What does freedom mean to you? How can you choose it today? If this message resonated with you, share it, comment, or apply it in your own life. Let this be a reminder that you hold the power to create a life of emotional freedom, one choice at a time. Your freedom starts here. Choose it, nurture it, live it,